All right, guys, welcome to another info session. Today we have Miss Cherish with us. She's a child welfare leader and a podcast host. How you doing today, ma'am?
I'm doing good. How are you, Val?
I'm doing good. I'm gonna be honest with you, man. Like the word podcast, whenever I say it, that heavy accent always come out. I try to hide it, but I don't know.
Hey, don't worry about it. It's who you are, right? So
Right,
we're not
right.
always going to be able to pronounce words that we like to the way that it's supposed to, but we get it.
Thank you for your support, man. Thank you. Well, all right. So today, you have your podcast, right? What information do you have on there? What is your goal? Tell us. Talk to me.
Thank you, Val. So yes, the podcast is called Child Welfare Leaders Podcast.
All right.
And we challenge the status quo, and I help others, inspire others to lead right where they are. So no matter what position you are, if you're in the child welfare field, I'm going to hopefully inspire you to take action through the conversations that you'll listen to. And you can find the podcast on any major podcast platforms.
Okay. So now, if I had an iPhone or Android, talk me through how would I?
Yep. So if you have an iPhone,
Right.
you can actually go to the Apple store, the Apple app store, and you can type in the preferred app that you want. So whether it's Apple Podcasts, you could do Spotify. If it's Google, or if it's let's say iHeartRadio, you would download the app. And then once the app has downloaded, then you would go into the search bar and you'd put child welfare leaders. And then you should see myself standing, and it'll say Child Welfare Leaders Podcast. And I'm pretty sure that I'm the only one there.
Right.
The only one that'll pop up, because Child Welfare Leaders, there's not a lot of podcasts out there. One labeled that, or that's for us. So that's the beauty of it as well. But you should be able to see it. And then once you click that, you can tune into whatever episode, whether it's the beginning or the end. Just make sure you click the subscribe button, so that if you want to continue to tune in, it will automatically automate the newest episode every fourth Sunday of the month.
Oh, okay. That's pretty simple. So what are some conversations you've had before? Like what are some interesting conversation?
Yeah, so on the podcast as of lately, I've had someone who came in. She was a social worker from New York, and she talked about giving us skills, how we can utilize our skills, not just in the social work profession, but even in other areas of social work. I've had a guest who was a child welfare social worker, and she actually does direct practice in foster care with managing families. And she wrote a book about how to survive as a child welfare social worker that is available. And then recently, I'm actually launching a podcast episode, which is a bonus episode, that'll talk a little bit about a cool conference that I want people to check into. So those are just some of the conversations, but these are all people who are challenging status quo. They understand that, what we're seeing is not okay, and they want change like we do.
Right. I mean, you said something that blew my mind a little bit. She's the author that you had. She's actually a child welfare professional working in the field, and she had the time to write a book.
Yes. Wow, she made time to write a book, and she launched herself, and she is out here pubbing that book, and she was able to talk to us about our experience that inspired that. So that's the episode that people definitely need to check out if they're interested in being in the field.
And I'm just thinking, as a like working, you do so much documentation, so much typing, not to go home and write a book. I don't know, man.
Or just the emotional toil, right? Like everything that we deal with on the day to day, and then to go home, and then she has a whole family, and go home and be staying up to write a book, or getting a book, together to publish. I mean, that was crazy, but that was a challenging the status quo. That was doing something against the grain, and
most definitely.
Love that. I love when people doing that.
And I'm sure her book is going to be, inspiring to others, right? Within the child welfare field.
Absolutely.
But okay, so with your podcast, right? What are? I mean, have you had any like crazy moments that took place? Because I know any funny stories, or you want to share with us?
I would say funny stories. I think that the whole, start of my podcast is kind of funny, just because it came out of a place where I wanted to be able to speak on some of the things that I was seeing that I was frustrated with. And I'm having these conversations, and I'm like, I need to have a bigger platform to be able to speak because I know other people feel the same way, but
Most
being able to be
definitely. Yeah.
productive, right? So I think some of the funny part is me, coming on a podcast, and I'm not this formal, polished person because when you kind of scroll through to see available podcasts, you see colleges like universities who have sponsored podcasts about, with
Right.
lecturers, and you have these professional, um, yeah, polished people, speaking on the
Right.
podcast, sharing stories. I'm not. I'm just like, hey, y'all, this is Child
That's
Welfare
it.
Leader Cherish, and I'm, getting to you. And then, of course, I'm not what people normally see, right? I
Right.
have loud lipstick, I'm,
Yeah.
don't pronounce every word correctly, but that's okay. I'm not ashamed of that, right? And I'm asking questions and challenging people to think. So yeah, I think that's kind of like the funny part. I laugh at myself sometimes. I'm like, oh man. And I do sometimes have that pressure, like imposter syndrome, like, what am I doing? But
Right.
I'm like, you know what? I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm creating change. I'm cultivating, that
Right.
change that needs to happen.
I want you to know that you are the voice of many, right?
Yeah.
Those polished folks that are up there, a lot of times, some of they're not very relatable to the average folks like that are in the field going out to those home, knocking on those doors. You're relatable. We're not far away from it, right? We're doing it right now. So I think that that's a good skill set where you could really connect with your audience and with your guest speakers. Me and you, we both, right? We're able to
Yeah.
connect, and we know exactly what's going on right now.
Yep.
Now, what are some takeaways you want your listeners or your guests to walk away with?
I really want to empower people who are listening, no matter where they are and how they're working and what position they have in the child welfare fields. I want to empower them in their abilities and really inspire them to change. Kind of what you're doing at,
Right.
with the child welfare professionals Facebook group, right? So we all come together, we're networking, we're sharing these stories, our frustrations. Sometimes, not just the frustration, but our anger, or our
Right.
sadness,
Right.
with situations that have happened, and having other people come in and empower us to keep on doing the
Right.
work,
Right.
right?
Right.
And taking lead. So I think
Right.
that's really what, my goal is to give people tools, talk about thought provoking, things that are happening in the system, where the gaps are in terms of being broken and what can we do, and really empower people in their abilities, their unique abilities, and inspiring them to take action on that, to basically not be okay with the status quo of the system and these negative, outcomes, or perpetuating the negative outcomes, because of the negative cycles of the system.
So I wanted to ask you, so the pack, how long is it? Like on average, is it something I could listen to on my way to work, on my way to a home visit?
Yeah.
Like how long are they on average?
So I would say average, they're about 45, 50 minutes. Sometimes I do have episodes that are like 20, 30 minutes. But it's definitely something, like, I've had people tell me that they've listened to it even while they're doing their documentation. So
Right.
that's
Right.
part of their self-care. And I'm like,
Right.
shout out, but it's also something, because I'm a big coffee lover. I'm like, yo, grab your coffee
Let's
and
do
get
this.
ready, snuggle up, in your favorite chair if you got to do that. Or, even on your way to a home visit or on your way to work. I used to have an hour and a half to 2 hour travel time to work. So that's where I was listening to podcasts. So
Right.
that was sometimes too where I fueled my thoughts for the day. I got
Right.
ready, like, yeah,
Right.
let's do this, and walking to work truly amped up and ready to take on the day, because I listened to something that helped me to fuel my why and that passion, right? So
Right.
that's, whatever's convenient. If you're cooking, if you're getting ready, getting the kids ready, if you're going to a home visit, you can, driving home from work, whatever, that's when to listen to it.
Well, all right, Miss Cherish, it was a pleasure having you today. And guys, make sure you check out this podcast. I think it's beneficial, right? It's something that is to hear that voice. It's very relatable to what we're doing. And the more information we could get, whether it's self-care, professional growth, or ways to challenge the system to improve it for those we serve, and ways to challenge the system for better outcome for ourselves as professionals. Well, all right, guys, I am Val, your fellow child welfare professional. This is going to end our session, and let's stay connected.